order. Any additions or deletions of the agenda?
Yes, please. Affordable housing strategy.
I'd like to add banners.
Okay, so H3 is affordable housing. Did you get that in with their affordable housing?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
H4 banners. Anyone else? We're going to do a setup meeting for the grant thing. We'll do H5 setup meeting for grant committee. Huh? Oh yeah, that's right. Forget that one. Take that off. I like to delete H5. Any other deletions? Hearing none, we'll approve the agenda as presented. Have a motion?
So moved.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Minutes of September 20th. Your package. Anyone have anything they want to bring up? If not, I need a motion to accept it.
Motion to accept.
Seconder.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Business arisings.
That was the minutes. Should be motion to approve, not accept.
Yes. Yes. Motion
Yes.
to approve.
Yeah.
All right. All right, business arising. I see you got in touch with the Macintoshes. That's on your report anyway. Right. Let's move into staff reports. Chief CAO.
Okay. So for the month of September, in the planning department, there was one development permit issued for an auxiliary building at 10 Birch Street. Pines Resort proposed development. So we have received an application to amend the land use bylaw to rezone the property across the shore road from the current commercial resort, from the resort zone to residential mixed use zone for the development of the waterfront vacation condominiums under the management of the DP Pines Resort. The initial review of the application by Chris Millier, the town planner, has revealed that the amendment to the municipal planning strategy would be necessary, and that typically council would need to confirm its support to initiate an MPS LUV amendment, since the issues and changes are primarily policy focused. To initiate the MPS LUV amendment, it is expected that council should be provided a good understanding of the overall proposal. We believe Harry and Company, which is basically Harry Jose, as the architect on behalf of the Pines, and the people that we had the conversation with from the Pines Resort, understand this and are working on an updated submission following our last conversation. So once initiated, an MPS LUV process requires public consultation. So as per the Town of Digby's public participation program policy, the Planning Advisory Committee is responsible for identification of a process appropriate to each planning exercise for soliciting public input into the planning process, and in all cases shall include at least one public meeting. Chris also would encourage the discussion of a Pines redevelopment to be done together rather than piecemeal. The planning issues relate to the entire property of the current development, not just one parcel. Dillon Construction has drafted the development terms of reference, and this has been forwarded. This terms of reference have been forwarded to the developers. Terms of reference will direct the developers to the type of information that the town requires to be included in their submission to the town for review and consideration. Terms of reference are necessary with the size and scope of the Pines Resort proposed development to be able to assess all aspects of the development and its impact on the town's existing infrastructure. And that infrastructure includes the road infrastructure, water infrastructure, storm sewer, wastewater infrastructure, and just land use infrastructure as well. Anybody have any questions on that, or?
So instead of doing just the condominiums, Chris wants everything all in one package, basically.
The thing is, it's almost like it appears that the Pines are trying to, or the group is trying to do things in little things instead of giving us a proposal what the total concept, and the fear of not knowing the total concept is the fact that council may decide, okay, we're in favor of phase 1, right? Not knowing what phase 2 and phase 3 are going to do to our infrastructure, right? And so basically, we'd like to see the overall picture so that we can make a decision can be made, an educated decision can be made on what effects it may or may not have on our infrastructure, right? I mean, this is not to be meant that we're anti-development, because we're not. We're just want to make sure that the development is good development, and we don't have to sell the farm or sell the town in order to finance the development, right? Because if they say, well, it's going to be millions and millions of dollars of assessment to you, which is fine, but if it costs us millions and millions and millions of dollars to upgrade systems to meet that, right? Then we're not. There'll be a lot. It's not fair to the taxpayers to. So basically, if there's things that need to be upgraded, then they have to be identified and talk with the developers and say, listen, we have to upgrade this in order for this to happen, and there has to be a deal struck between the town and the developer on who pays for what.
Yes.
Basically, right?
It's more fair to them as well, because if they plan on that stuff and don't have it, then we could turn down half of their projects, and they may have investors and everything already and going, right? So
Well, it saves us money too, if they
Yeah.
have only gone to phase 1 and then they
That's right.
change their mind, that we haven't put a lot of resources into something else.
We ran into something similar with Tideview after the fact that the deal was all in, and then they said, well, where's our sidewalk? And to find out, well, it's $1.5 million for a sidewalk, and cooperation between provincial government, two municipal governments. Beforehand is way better than after the fact.
Yeah. That's a good, very, very good example of things that got done and not looking just outside of the box of building a facility for special care, home for special care, right? They didn't go outside and say, well, and that too is partial to the location that was picked. It was picked there because it was land that was available. That land belonged to the town. It was sold to them, but they moved from inside of town boundaries to just outside of the town boundaries, and never give another thought to the fact that in town the sidewalks were all there, right? And out of town they're not. So this is just a good example of why we need to get our homework done. And that's what we retained Dillon Consulting to do the term of reference and be our professional voice. They can analyze the results we get from their engineers, and then we can, and so that, and it can be laid out to council so the council can understand it. And
So are the Pines aware of our concerns?
yes, they are. I mean, basically, this was verbally told to them, but it's like, I hate to say it, but I think that they have just said, well, we're going to try this and see if they'll approve this instead of coming. I do know that there's engineers working on the whole concept.
Okay.
Right? So basically, they just need, and now that the terms of reference have been issued, that's the guidelines for their engineers to come up with these answers. Some of the things that are in there is even a traffic study to see what effects that development is going to have on the traffic patterns on both White House Road and on Shore Road.
Yeah.
Right? Whether there's going to be a need for right-hand or left-hand turning lanes, either going into the Pines or across the street, right, for instance.
So it's an action plan going forward. Should the planning advisory committee sort of schedule a meeting to start checking into some of these items?
I think basically at this point, we're planning advisory will be meeting, but it won't be meeting, we'll be dealing with a rezoning.
Yeah.
We won't be moving on to the Pine stuff until we have more information. But basically,
Yes. I didn't mean the Pines, I meant the Granny Suites, and the plate's getting full if we start chipping some of these off.
Yeah. So they basically, yeah. I mean, the next two things is the Granny Suite things and the rezoning. So if we can have a discussion at the 27th meeting on the Granny Suites in addition to the rezoning, right? And we'll probably try to have that so that, basically it does require the Granny Suite backyard Granny Suites does require change to the MPS, and that's a little more of a process because you have to start off with a public input, public meeting, right? Because that's your planning strategy. So when you're forming your strategy, whatever's in the strategy, if that says that you can, if our strategy had said we could have Granny Suites, then it would have been, and it wasn't in our LUB, it's just an amendment to our LUB to allow it in the LUB. But we can't put anything in the LUB that's not in our MPS, right? I sort of learned that the hard way. So the planning strategy is the only document that the provincial government has to approve. The LUB, they don't necessarily have to check it off, but they do the MPS. The MPS has to go to them, reviewed by the department, and the minister signs off saying yes, because it has to meet the provincial interests and things like that. And there's criteria that it must meet. So
right now, for the Pine proposal, there's nothing that you need us.
not at this particular time. I think I just wanted to bring it up to make council aware that we're trying to. They're trying to get piecemeal applications in, but we're trying to say we'd like to see the full picture, to get the full proposal, black and white. Because all that we've had, quite frankly, has just been pictures, right? There's been nothing in black and white saying, we expect we expect we're gonna need this much, potable water, this much sewage is gonna be, wastewater, this much stormwater. Like all that information is what information we need, because downstream, that's what we'll have to deal with.
It seems funny that there's been sort of more information on social media than there has been directly at council.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that they're trying to market, they're trying to see whether they can sell these or not.
It's a test, okay.
Yeah, and if they can start selling, they get a good positive response, and then, you see, I think that's what they're fishing for. But you're right, they have been playing their cards very close to the chest and not revealing anything. They'll just call us up, say they want a conference call or a Zoom call or whatever, and said, well, what about this? Will this work and this work? And Chris has said, listen, you put a written proposal in front of us so that we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Then we will respond. But until then, we're not gonna say, yes, that'll happen, or no, it won't happen.
Well, it puts you in a bad position too, because if it's just a conference call, it sort of leaves a margin for, well, you said this would be okay, and no, you didn't say that would be okay. There's nothing in the record to say what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically, as Chris put it, he said that the meetings have been, we've just been taking stuff and throwing it at the wall and seeing if it'll stick, right? That's basically how he put it. And so if something seemed to perk our interest or whatever, we thought that lukewarm to it, then they'd say, okay, well, let's go in this direction. I think that's what they've been doing. They've been on a fishing expedition, right? But I do know that they've retained engineers, and the engineers are working on the information that's required. So basically, once we get a proposal, and that doesn't mean that we can't, see, they've also, in the application for rezoning, said this is what they want rezoned for. Well, what they want rezoned for doesn't even allow for what they want to do, right? And that's why this whole thing's not just a simple rezoning, it's also an NPS amendment to allow for it. Because basically, when the Pines, that area there was zoned, zoning was done for that area as commercial resort, right? It was because the resort was at that point owned and was highly expected to always be owned by the province of Nova Scotia, right? So basically that's why it was zoned that way. Now that it's in private hands, right, and they want to do something that's a little bit different. Now, the province still owned it, and they said, well, yeah, we want to build a condominium. The thing is, if they wanted to build it, then just go ahead and build it, because the province is like, we don't need permits and we don't need this. So, we come across that before with the new building at the school, that little building that they built. I went after them for permits and said, no, we don't have to have permits, for the province. And the same with the medical center, or the new building that was built.
Courthouse ramp.
Yeah, everything like that, they don't come and get permits because they're the province. So, so on the granny suites, we do, I guess, we do have an application for a granny suite per se. And unfortunately, under the things, I can't approve that permit because it doesn't allow. And believe me, I've looked at all the different types of loopholes that I might be able to, had the garage been attached to the building, probably could have been allowed. because it's part of the main building. But because it's an auxiliary building off by itself, and our accessory buildings under our bylaw says shall not be used for human habitation. So that's where, the place where this guy wants to do this is a perfect location. It's, the garage is somewhat isolated from the neighbors and everything else, and it's not that it's a bad thing, it's just, and so I think that, it's gonna be a very good thing to start moving the conversation on that particular thing. I try to move it ahead on the 27th if possible, and because that too is an NPS amendment, but the thing is, we should get the ball rolling. If indeed council, it sounded to me like at the council meeting that was something the council might want to consider, and there are other units. Halifax just recently changed theirs to allow for those type of units in the backyards. They also allowed in low density residential areas, the second one, which we were ahead of the curve by allowing 2 dwelling units in a low density residential dwelling. Right? So we were ahead of the curve there. We just didn't go down far enough to say, okay, the granny suites or the things in the backyard could also be, as long as there's only 2 units, right, in total.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what this guy wants to do. He doesn't want to make another unit in his house. He wants to make a standalone unit. Right, so. Building department, so there were 3 permits issued, generated $1,535.40 in permit fees. So at 53 Sydney Street, commercial office, value $250,000. Then Birch Street is the accessory building, and Warwick Street, commercial grocery store. Yes, that's renovations that are being done at Sobeys. Fire department, there's no report. Office of the CAO, the NSEMO alert ready emergency alert. So apparently now there's a letter of authority that needs to be signed by the CAOs within REMO as required in order for CAOs within REMOs to have the ability to request an alert ready message to be sent by a municipality that is not theirs but part of the REMO. So Jeff and I received the draft letter, and we're going to be talking about getting it executed. So basically what that means is that in a REMO, there are times that Jeff and I will be in state of emergency or whatever. Jeff and I will be spelling off, especially if it's a long span. And so if the emergency happens to be in town, we'll say, and so I'll be the first one up, but then after trial of 14 hours, Jeff may take over. So in the meantime, while Jeff is taking over, if there's an alert that needs to go out, Jeff would have the authority to be able to make that on behalf of the town, and vice versa if the other thing was around. So that's what that's about. The ANS Fall Conference was held on the 5th to 8th of October in Dartmouth, and it was considered a success. All delegates were required to show proof of vaccination upon registering, and masks were required as per the COVID protocols. So, signage, nothing's fancy, so the signage has arrived for placement on Water Street, and it should be installed this week. Frank McIntosh Memorial Park, so I made contact with the McIntosh family, and they would like to wait until spring for the installation of the sign to correspond with the installation of the fountain. The marketing levy. We definitely have discussed the bylaws that are required before the marketing levy can come into effect. The target date for the marketing levy to be enforced is April 1st, 2022. And at the August 18th meeting of data, the marketing levy was discussed, and data would like to request that the marketing levy start January 1st, 2022, to allow for a soft rollout before the busy season starts. Karen Enright, the data chair, was to send a memo to the town in question the January start date. To date, the writing of this report and reading this report, we have not received the memo or correspondence with that request. Jeff and I discussed the possibility of moving the commencement date to January 1st, 2022, and the timeline is extremely tight and most likely impossible to meet the request if officially received. Due to the timeline processes that are required by the MGA in passing bylaws, I would recommend to council that initiation date of the marketing levy remain at April 1st, 2022. So,
To make that a motion, to take the council.
Yeah.
We'll make that a motion, so we take that, that's.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We have a data meeting Thursday, so.
Do take note that Councilor Turnbull was not in attendance at that meeting, right? That was discussed
22nd,
at the
January 1st.
no, August 18th.
Yeah,
I think.
for the January
Yeah.
1st request.
Yeah, for that request, so I'll make that point because it was brought up by somebody that, the reason you didn't know is because your representative didn't tell you.
Well,
I said that's not true because number one, the town's representative was not in attendance, and number two, he did submit the report, and that was the first that we heard of it, was when he submitted his report, and so there's still been no official request.
The reason I explained to you yourself and
Yeah.
the mayor that I had another meeting. And,
Yeah, and that's fine, I was trying to I'm just making the point that you were not in attendance at that meeting, so you were not privy to the conversations that went on around it, so, and,
Even if he was though, that's not the official request.
no, exactly. The thing is, and there was no motion, it was basically consensus. So there was no motion in the minutes that I could see, it was just that she was gonna send a memo to the town, making that request, and no memo was ever received. And the municipality's representative was in attendance, but couldn't really remember a lot of the details surrounding it, so, it must have been just something that was reported by the reporter. They were not, I guess my point is, neither representative was asked to bring it to the respective councils. Right. Modified work week, pilot, so we have reached the end of the second phase of the modified work week pilot. I met with all town staff to discuss whether staff revert to option A or continue with option B. The unanimous consent of staff was that we would continue with option B. So effective October 18th, 2021, which is today, until March 31st, 2022, which is the end of the pilot period, Staff hours will be from 8 a.m. to 4:45, and staff will be alternating Fridays off, giving staff an earned day off every other Friday. The hours of work would include 1 hour of unpaid lunch per day, and the town hall will be open to the public from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. So in February of 2022, a review is to be conducted to determine whether it should continue on a permanent basis, and a recommendation to council will be made for March 31st, 2022. So the flood risk infrastructure investment program for the Racket Road, we've received word that the application that was submitted under the program has been approved. The correspondence addressed to Mayor Cleveland from Municipal Affairs and Housing Minister John Moore advised that the DMAH will contribute 50% of the eligible costs of the project to a maximum contribution of $99,750 towards the cost of the project. The minister also stated that the department is coordinating the public program announcement in the interim, that we keep the funding information confidential until such time as the public announcement occurs. The project end date is March 31st, 2022, so we have a very small window to get the project completed. The tender documents are currently being drafted by our engineers, which we expect to take a couple of weeks, and we'll be tendering the project at that time. We had a discussion on, we were hoping that we might be able to do some of it in-house, and like some of the other projects that we do. However, it's clearly laid out in the things that basically we cannot claim our wages. So we're better off, I guess, to tender it, and we can claim shareable dollars on the whole thing. Unfortunately. That concludes my report.
Need a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public Works.
So this year, Public Works, when we do our undercoating of our vehicles and equipment, we're going to undercoat the fire trucks also. Spent a couple hours with the engineers about the Prongs project. We installed Decker sign. Continued working on the corrosion control plan. It's in its final stages. One employee helped put the ice in at the rink. Worked there for 2 days. We ordered the spare UV parts for the stove. Parts for water and wastewater are still very hard to get. We still have many items on back order. Completed the uniform order for the public work employees. Wastewater, we did our daily tests. Cleaned UV number 2. Repaired the road in Smith's Cove. And we dug and repaired a sewer main on King Street. Streets, we worked with the pavers. We started ditching Thomas Road. Equipment, changed garages where we're taking our equipment basically. So the new 5-ton has gone to a different garage, and they believe they found the issue with the truck. So the new part's in. They're changing the oil in the truck because they found coolant in the oil. And so changing the oil filter, and then we got to run it for 2 weeks and then change the oil filter again so we can find out how much damage is done to the engine. The old 5-ton has a broken spring hanger, and actually it's all fixed, so we have it back now. And we've started undercoating all of our equipment and trucks. Building maintenance and capital projects, 2nd Avenue extension. Road top is completed, we're just waiting for the guardrail to be installed. We replaced a section of storm sewer on King Street from Carlton to Racket Road. Under safety, having severe issues with our elm trees in town. Along Mount Street, we have 6 trees that need to be removed. The cost to remove the trees is $9,600 plus tax. It's above the budget that's approved by council, and I highly recommend that we get these trees cut this fall. We only have a time frame from October 1st until March 31st to remove the trees. The bugs in the trees are dormant at this time. Throughout the summer months, they're not dormant, obviously. And if you cut them and move them around town, then it will continue to infect the trees around town. Once the trees are 25% dead, they need to be cut down. Talking to the company that I've hired, or haven't hired, that I'd like to hire to cut the trees down, it looks like we're probably going to lose all of our elm trees within town within the next 2 to 3 years. Anything that's within Nova Scotia Power range, Nova Scotia Power will do a cost share with us. And if it's up by the hospital, for example, on the corner of West and Warwick, there's a bank of transformers there. So there's one dead elm tree there, and they will cut that down at fully at their cost because it's such a dangerous one to cut down.
Is that the only one?
No, they did two. They did 2 on Birch Street Forest last year. 2 great big massive ones.
Yeah.
They paid for the full shot. That was like 10 grand. Those 2. So
It was huge.
yeah, they were massive. Yeah. So next year there'll be 2 remaining elm trees on Main Street, and if they do need to be cut down next year, the cost of those trees is $5,600. Of course, are the 2 biggest trees. And personnel, we have 2 employees off on medical leave.
Questions?
Well, the only question, it's not a question, is the comments that you will hear is, well, you're cutting all those little elm trees down in the town, but there's a reason for it.
Basically, excuse me, I know the comments because I hear them as well, but the thing is, if anybody knows that the trees that we want to cut down now, if they look at them all summer, there hasn't been a leaf on them, right? So they're obviously dead, right? That's the ones that those 6 trees, most of them are fully dead.
Yeah, there might be 25% life in a couple of them, maybe. And down by, well, say Wayland's down here is a prime example of what happens once they die. They do crash, and they took out his fence down there. Probably noticed they're very dangerous once they get to a certain stage.
Yep.
You know, they're big trees, big trees.
No, you mentioned it. Sorry, just to say, you mentioned it's over budget. The budget is, we have 9,500 in the budget, and I don't see any expenditures, so
Yeah.
you're not much over.
Yeah, and there's one that's already been done.
Okay.
That's,
Maybe not even.
yeah, it's well over $3,000. So,
Okay.
and we still have our regular limbing to do, which is going to be another couple thousand. So
You've replanted some trees too.
we try to replant a tree for everyone we cut down. Yeah, if not more. It's nice to do 2 for 1 if we can. So.
Yep.
Has anyone looked into that tree next to Kevin's property here, that lady next door? Says that the tree, there's a bad tree there.
The Schrank?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's,
is that one of them?
well, Mr.
It's not one
Floyd,
that we're doing.
No,
That's all.
I knew the Shrinks had to do it, yeah.
That's pressure is being applied.
Okay.
I think that's that.
Okay, good. So we need a motion to take to council for the approval of the trees. Yeah,
Yeah, basically just amend that line, budget line by $9,600. To approve $96 additional funding for tree removal.
so we get a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Just one question, the rink. Why are we looking at the rink?
We have the last couple of years, we've helped them when they need employee shortage, then we'll let them employ for a day or 2, 3 days, whatever they need. So,
Is that a cost share with the municipality?
we charge them full rate for the employee being there.
Yeah, just, instead of them coming on the street, driving for somebody, you just, you sell them our service.
Cool.
Didn't know that.
They find somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, that's why.
Yeah.
Right. So, any other questions? If not, can we get a motion to accept that report?
Motion to accept the report.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Moving on to Department of Finance.
The report is in the package, statement of operations. no major variances I've really noticed other than deed transfer tax continues to be high and is again going to exceed last year, and last year was exceptionally high. Not sure whether property prices are as high as they were, but certainly the turnover is very high because that's what we get our deed transfer tax from. The next item is the backhoe lease buyout, and that would require a motion. So the management team has looked at the value of buying it out at $84,200 plus HST, and believe that that's a very favorable amount. And you can see some of the costs, although couldn't get any perfect comparisons for the same year, same model that sold recently. It's apparent from the ones that I could find that that would be a good price. I mean, some of the ones that were sold with Ritchie Brothers auction, and that's auction price, which is generally low. Those were in July 2020 and September 2020. Likely prices have done nothing but go up, and availability has probably gone down. So we feel comfortable recommending that at that price, the 2019 John Deere backhoe represents a good value. And so we have a recommendation that a motion be passed to ask council to buy out the lease at the price of $84,200 plus HST.
Alright, anyone like to make that motion to take the council?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
Questions?
this is refer to them as the town taxi, because you see that's the one that's going every day, you turn around. Understand that? And I'll phrase that, Ed, where in the past, I have seen very wasteful use of that backhoe. I haven't seen it lately, I must say.
Keep them busy, I'll put it that way.
Yes.
You always have stuff to do on board. There's no excuse why you could be driving around.
Yeah.
So,
But I'll give you the example. I saw the small bucket on the back, laying the big one. It was driven to Town Works for a small bucket load of asphalt patch. Driven to the corner by KFC, patch. Driven all the way back. You know, pickup truck could have done that a lot faster.
yep, that's why we use bags now.
Yeah.
We don't buy the bulk load anymore. We use bags because we put a lot of bags in the bucket.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And okay, so the draft.
We're just gonna finish.
Sorry.
Favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Carried, go ahead.
Sorry for that.
It's okay.
Okay, so the draft financial condition indicators, or FCIs, these come out every year. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is. It's the report card for all the municipalities that the province puts out for your financial condition. They vary from your tax base increase over the years, your number of deficits you've had, your budget accuracy, taxpayers' ability to pay the taxes based on their income. And so we generally look at, you want green in all your indicators. How many were not green? 3 of ours were not green. So that gives us an overall assessment. They give each municipal unit an overall assessment. That puts us in the low risk category. And it should be considered a fairly good report, as only 8 of the 26 towns in Nova Scotia are considered low risk. 13 are moderate risk and 5 are high risk. So our financial situation looks good right now, and I always warn, a couple of large capital projects can make that turn around very quickly, or loss of assessment on your $6 million resort can fall away, as we found out in 1 year. So it's good for now, but shouldn't just rest on it. The 3 that are problems are 3 that are sort of outside of our short-term ability to fix. So one is our increase in assessment values over the last 3 years. That's a difficult one for us to manage, at least in the short term. Hopefully that will be coming up. It's compared against, I believe, CPI though, so whether we grow it or not compared to consumer price index, I don't know, but we'll see. One of the other ones is that we always seem to get a yellow or red on is the taxpayers' ability to pay. It's the property taxes divided by the household income. So household tax burden, I think it's called. And it's not that we have high taxes per household. It's that we have very low household income per dwelling unit. I can't remember what the numbers are, but we're down in the 30s. We're not about $40,000. So we're very low. We compare unfavorably to Cape Breton, and we always talk about here at Cape
So
Breton.
is there an indicator, Matthew, on the rate of taxes that do get paid even though we have a low income? Are we?
No. So basically, you're talking about taxes per dwelling unit.
Yes.
No, I have done that exercise ourselves just to see, and it's been a few years since I did it, but we were below average taxes per dwelling unit, which is good, but if the incomes are very low, we're still going to do poor on that indicator because people are spending a large portion of their income on property taxes, unfortunately. And so that's a difficult one. And the third one, I think, is basically saying you have old assets because our undepreciated asset value is quite low. So we haven't built a lot of new assets recently. I don't put a lot of faith in that because it's based on some historical numbers that were very unreliable. But it's still something to look at. That we're not building new infrastructure. We don't have a brand new rink. We don't have a brand new paved downtown like some of the towns. So our infrastructure is getting old. So those are the three. Those are the three indicators that we're not green on. The next one is e-transfers. I brought this up before, and we had thought at that time that maybe we don't need to deal with e-transfers because there are inherent problems with them. You get an email, somebody says, I just sent you $75, and that's all they say. What do you do with it? It's in your bank account now. But COVID has really taught us that there's a lot of people that just want to pay for their zoning letter from Ontario for a very small amount. Or I'm out of town and I want to give you the money for my building permit so my contractor can get going. So what I'm suggesting is if council is okay that we could amend or come up with a draft of the accepted payments method policy. The last time that was made was 2014. And that says what forms of payment, whether it's cash, debit, we don't take credit card. Come up with a draft of that and see if that's acceptable to council. I think, Tom, that'd be the best way to do it, wouldn't it? If we want, El Salvador says yes, town of Digby.
James, everybody, we'll take it.
So is there a charge for e-transfer?
No, neither party, to my knowledge, is charged. We have that ability with our Scotia Connect software. Oh, actually, good point. I think there may be small charges in there. Yes, I will have that with the draft, but I think they're very small, if there are any.
Because I know ended up costing us with the credit card.
Yeah. I know personal e-transfers, there's no fees, at least that I've seen, going both ways. But commercially, there may be. And I seem to remember that, yes, something's ringing in my mind that there might be some small fees. But I remember them being small.
$1.
Yeah.
It's $1. All business stuff's $1.
But if it comes down to commercial paying e-transfer and it's costing us money,
But I guess
It's like a water bill for $60 isn't going to be a residential, right?
one thing we're going to recommend is that we do not get into water bills and tax bills, because that's where we would have the nightmare of, we get an email from Joe Blow for $48, and it doesn't even tell us it's a water bill. They think their water bill's paid. We have no idea what this is. All we have is an email address, and we tried to email it, and they don't monitor it well. And we don't get a response.
Yeah,
Sometimes you get
this
five.
is for basically user fee
Yeah.
type things, like development permits or
Yeah.
zoning letter confirmation fees and, tax, even
RCM.
lawyers wanna use it because we use, anybody doing a real estate transaction in a town, like, they'll say, well, I want a zoning confirmation letter. Okay, well, we can provide you that, it's $50. I need it today, how can I get you the $50 today?
Yeah.
And they're in Halifax or maybe even Toronto, right? So that's what this is about, trying to make it easier for, not as much for people to pay the taxes with, but basically,
Yeah, we're not talking about a large number of transactions. Another one would be criminal records check. It might save somebody a trip to town hall, because right now, just to get your criminal records checked, you have to come to town hall, pay your $11.50, take that receipt, go up to the RCMP and say, here, I've paid. And then they somehow explain that, oh no, I'm a volunteer. Come back to town hall, get their $11.50 refunded to them, and then go back to the RCMP. So it makes these small things that don't occur very often a lot easier, and the cost, we're not heading to anything like our previous $13,000 a year Visa transaction fees.
Have you ever used it the other way? Have you ever e-transferred from the town? Would there be anything that you would have to do for that?
some of our payments are electronic fund transfer.
We can do EFTs
Yeah.
from the town, and yeah, that's easier for us because
Yeah.
we have a commercial setup, we can do it. The average person to do an electronic funds transfer, different from an e-transfer, usually means they have to walk into a bank, they have to say, here's all the banking details, I want to do an electronic funds transfer to that entity. But we can do it yet. E-transfers right now we cannot send. We could get that ability, but we don't have that set up in the system.
Do we even need it?
I don't think we do. I can't think of any scenario where we've run into, other than refunding some people, but that can be done with a check. A check is always a much nicer trail.
It's a little cheaper to do it.
Even though EFTs, when we send EFTs or I send transfers, I can't do it myself in the accounting system, or Dan can't. I can initiate it, and then I literally say to Tom, there's a transaction and it needs a second person approval. So Tom needs to log in, second person approval, and then the money goes out.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it, if that's the way it is.
Yeah, it would require a change of the policy, so we'll have to come up with a draft anyway. So council can see it.
Is, it's the odd extreme circumstance where somebody needed something because of whatever. I just basically said, this is my email address, email me the money. And then when they did, then I would go to the counter and pay for it, right? But that's, not the best way to do things, right? And I've only done it, I think, twice.
The
Under,
more tools we have to take money in, the better.
Yeah.
You have to do a password or something, don't you? Like when you email something, isn't there something that says password get water bill or whatever? Yeah.
Apparently that's changed somehow.
Well,
if you're set up
We can
that it's direct deposit,
Yes.
like somebody can
And-
email mine, for instance, if somebody emails me money, it goes automatically,
Yes.
I get an email saying that so-and-so just deposited
Yeah.
X number of dollars into your.
and that's how we'll do it. And actually for the curling club, that's how I set it up as well, so it avoided all the passwords. And it avoids the person doing the bookkeeping actually ending up with an email that they can deposit into any account they want to. So it will be set up so that the e-transfer goes directly into the town of Digby bank account. I can't put it in that agreement. And the other is just minor things unless there are questions from the committee.
Ready? I can need a motion to accept the Director of Finance report.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Special Constable reports.
Danger Sewer Unsightly Premise Report for the month of October. 10 Carlton, there's been no change, still monitoring the property. 58 Carlton Street, I've received complaints concerning the amount of loose garbage in and around the garbage bins of the residents. I had contacted the building manager and cleaned it up the next day. Property manager had informed me that a new garbage box has been built, and that has been built. It's been on the property now for a couple of weeks. 56 St. George Street, this building has been taken down and the grounds have been cleaned up. 176 Queen Street, property has a dangerous tree located on the property. It is now in the process of being taken down. This tree was not on town property and the removal is at the expense of the property owner. For protective services for the month of September and October, the CCTV cameras are in full operation with 5 new cameras to be added within the month of October. I don't have a date on that as of yet, but I've been talking with our guy who does all our cameras now, so he's supposed to be notifying me and being on to it this month. So, park control, nothing to report. Civic addresses, 2 civics have been added. One was to Leo's small outer building, which is off of Water Street, which is now 69 Water Street. And the other one was Mark Camo's, and I don't know why that wasn't added last month, but it is now. Which is down off of, which is 28 St. George Street. Dog control, nothing to report at this time. Crossing guards, nothing to report. Solid waste management, nothing to report. Taxi licenses, some of the taxi drivers are in favor of changing the rates due to the cost of fuel costs going up. That's not for the town rates, that's for the outside rates, and that's up to them to change that. But if it was the town rates, it comes to us.
So how does that change, Bruce, if they come from out of town in town?
If they come,
From out of town into town? That's the rate from out of town that applies?
Yeah.
I believe so.
And initiate the town.
Gotcha.
But it's the other way, it's the in-town rates.
Yeah.
Bylaw violations, no violations at this time, and that's the end of my report. Is there any questions?
So, 2 Water Street, or back up 2 Water Street.
2 Water Street.
Was it 2 Water Street, the one I mentioned last, across from the post office?
That's the,
Kevin Ellis?
oh, yes,
9 Water.
that's on my next month's report.
Okay.
It's, I haven't forgotten about it, I'm on to that, so. I have to talk to the CEO about that too, because, it might be to the point where a building inspector might have to be.
Well, see his proof.
And I received a call the other day for 90 Queen Street. 2 little properties there.
Queen Street.
I think it's 90.
I had 91, 2nd Avenue the other day. I don't have anything on Queen Street.
2 little white ones across from the.
Oh, that's be Joyce Camo's property.
Yeah, they were shocking clams and stuff into the green cart, and it must have been during the hot weather. There was complaint about the smell of it and everything. So
Yeah, I had a complaint like that before. I think it was back early in the summer, and I contacted the owners who lived down in Sonyville, and they had a guy come up and flush the green bins out. So I might have to do that again if it's still, if they're still.
yeah, well, it was last week
Okay.
or the week before.
But unfortunately, like clamshells, lobster shells, all that have
Yes.
to go in there.
Yes, yeah.
And we're gonna have, you know.
But if it's hot weather, it's.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they were doing it commercially to sell them, not just eating the clams, that's
Yeah.
different.
This is a commercial.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? If not, can a motion to accept the special constable report?
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to new business, doctor recruitment.
I was pleased with the mayor, and the mayor said he would.
Move to the next meeting.
Move that to the next meeting, I guess.
Vaccine policy.
Okay, so basically I put that on just to, as, council probably aware of, mandatory vaccine policies that have been, instituted by, both the federal government and provincial government and some HRM when it comes to their employees and Cape Breton has done flip-flop two different ways and ended up that they are designing the policy. The reason that the last flip-flop was going back to doing the policy was because of public outcry. And I guess I just wanted to put out there to find out whether council has had any inquiries or pressures from any of the constituents. We haven't at the town hall as to whether we're going to have a mandatory vaccine policy.
You know that it's very hard right now for a community group to find a place to meet. Because a lot of places, like SCC that have a big room, that they all have vaccine policies. Then there are a lot of older people that might not have them. So it's pretty hard for volunteer groups. It's one of the reasons why the Affordable Housing is meeting here to sign their documents tomorrow, because they couldn't find anywhere else.
So I guess the thing is that I'm been thinking about this, and I think right now, to be perfectly blunt, I'm sitting on the fence on whether we should have a policy or we don't need a policy. I'm like there on the fence, and I'm willing to sit on that fence for some time, right? Because basically, we have a small staff, and that, I don't know how many council members, and I don't want you to say it in public forum whether you're vaccinated or not, but I don't know whether, and some policies include council members and citizen members on their boards and everything, right? Right now, 90% of our employees are double vaccinated. We only have one in the town hall and one in the public works department. So we have 2 employees that are not at this time. So, we put and in my estimation, the risks are relatively low because of those individuals' lifestyle. And, but, we still have to look at the big picture. And that right now, I'd rather sit and wait to see some of the smoke to clear. And I do know the municipality, District of Digby, is moving forward with a policy, or we're going to draft a policy. I think that was politically motivated. And so I haven't had a chance to get details from Jeff yet, but what we're hearing is that he's going to be, if you're not, you're going to be out. Like, you do it. I'm not a,
Really? They get less employees than we do, or less risk. Really? They're all in one building, a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, if, I guess what I'm asking is council fine with this wait and see attitude, or?
Yeah, I get off the fence and don't worry about it personally.
I mean,
It's your choice, right? And I mean, it's just a respect thing. I mean, if I'm not double vaccinated, then I'll respect wearing a mask and, And that's all we can really ask, really, right?
Yeah. I mean, if, you know, if there's a, and I do have some model policies from those that either get some drafted to be, that council, the council are looking at, or there are, some that have been passed, and they're all over the board, you know. Some of them are pretty, almost word for word, the same as what the province put out. You got the drop dead date that you have to, or you're on administrative leave, okay? And, I mean, it's easy to say that, but that comes with its own consequences, right? So, you know, if, you know, you showed up to work tomorrow and Tim said to you, are you vaccinated? And you said no, and Tim says, see ya, he's gonna replace you, or you're not. That's the same with us. If we tell somebody they have to go home, we're gonna have to replace it. And in most cases, it's not easy to find a replacement.
So Mike can attest now, a lot of businesses are so short-handed as it is. That's
Well,
why I'm saying.
What I don't understand about it is, I can see healthcare like they're doing
Yeah.
probably, but as far as like business-wise and here, I mean, it's really hard to enforce and justify that if you're not gonna get vaccinated, then you're not coming back tomorrow. I mean, it's kinda out to lunch in my books, right?
I mean, some of the policies, they said, okay, well, if you're not vaccinated, and if you do have legitimate reasons, but there's this protocol, you have to wear masks all the time, and you also have to get 1 to 2 weekly tests, rapid tests done, and prove that you're virus-free.
Now I can see, kind of at the store, we have to take our temperature every day.
Yeah.
And we have to ask questions, and they have to circle the questions.
Yeah.
Right, so I mean, I can see maybe implementing something like that, but I wouldn't have, and we do it ourselves, it's not like you have to do it and ask the questions. I mean, it's just a backup to track things, who worked that day or whatever. But, you know, you got a temperature of 45, you better go home,
Yeah.
and we better all get tested, right? So,
But it's, I've seen it go the other way too, someone with the sniffles has gone home for 2 days, but
yeah,
They just have-
exactly, yeah, so.
it's scary on the side of caution.
So anyway, I just wanted to have a little discussion, and, you know, there was a lot of public outcry that, oh my God, you know, we should have a policy then. If not, you know, I think we're safe at this point, we can see what, especially I'm interested to see what the municipality does come up with a policy.
I mean, Halifax and Cape Breton with buses and transfer, and
Yeah.
bus drivers and stuff, I can see that,
Yeah.
you know. But, Goose County, that's kind of strange. No,
Well, and their risk is even, they're not even open to public agencies or anything yet either, right?
I don't think so.
No. So their risk is even lower.
Yeah. But they allow them to go to other meetings,
Yes.
so it's kind of strange.
Anyway,
All right. H3, affordable housing.
I just would like to, we've come to a point with affordable housing where we've made some inroads with our new committee that's forming, and they're signing their society papers tomorrow. They've made a proposal. We've got a couple of the things that they're trying to develop, and they're meeting with the development officers for the province who are sort of looking at that stuff, and accessibility coaches who are with the province to show them where the rents are and how to fill up rents and how to do that stuff. I think we're at a point now where we should have a discussion about a strategy. It relates to affordable housing as a town and how we see it. And I think that's sort of all the other pieces where getting the inroads to that money from the province and how to make that study, I mean, those kind of pieces would help every group trying to do that sort of thing. So I think we're at the point now where we should have a discussion on affordable housing strategy.
So, I guess, and it is a big topic.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's mental health and it all breaks extent to housing and everything. I guess the thing is we put out, I see we did the proposal for the VIC. And we're getting some land inventory and stuff. Is that where they see it moving on, like where you're gonna build or how you're gonna do it?
Well, that's the next project that we're doing, and that part of the discussion is a transition. Transition housing is something that, if you look at emergency shelter, there's hardly any funding anywhere for it. But if you look at transitional housing, there's a lot of venues that you can get money for. So they have already picked a design of a house, costed the house for materials. Now they buy those down in Victoria and start buying. Maybe that one, maybe that one, maybe that one. It's sort of the next step now too. They're getting their feet underneath them, but if the town could put that proposal together and get the money for it and build it, then they've got to figure out how they run it, how they look after it. It still becomes a town asset. It's a relationship there. So that's a part of the strategy too, right? So you've got to sort of figure out, and there's been other municipalities that have developed their own strategies. So we could look at some of those too.
I don't know in your meetings, but I find what we're having issues with, I know other towns are either, is when you see buildings like that are condemned, that we condemn.
Right.
I mean, that's 4 apartments gone, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, some of the affordable housing is gone because of slumlords, right? So how do we, I think if we break into some of that, that's easier fixing, I think, building on properties and
Absolutely.
stuff,
But
right?
that's the symbiote relationship between the town saying this has been foreclosed, it was, condemned.
Yeah.
How much money could we do to, redevelop that, right? They can raise that fund, it's all those pieces,
So,
you're right.
so is the society asking like the municipal units to actually build homes and locate them?
They're asking to be partners in it.
Partners.
Right. As well as they're asking developers to be partners, they're asking builders to be developers, carpenters, all that sort of thing too. They're looking at every model too. They're looking at affordable housing when it comes to cooperative, whether it comes to, trying to think of the name of it. They've been around for years and they come to community and they'll help a family build a house. Yes, thank you. They're looking at all those models, right? They're just trying to see how they can get something done the fastest way possible.
So we've still got to identify land and property to where they can go though. Is that what they're asking the town?
No,
No?
they're not at that stage yet. They're asking the town if the town would consider doing the proposal for the grant money for transitional housing. And then if that gets approved, that money, because they've got all the pieces. They've got, here's the type of house on a cement slab. Here's how much the building materials cost. We still have to do, like what would the foundation cost, what would the electrical cost, what would, all those sorts of things. But that can be done, right? You just have to have those figures in a very close estimate to put into your proposal.
So since you still have that to be done, is it possible like in the new year to have a presentation? Someone come to present to us what's going on?
Yeah, they can sort of bring it
January or February, once they get more down pat to exactly, it's like lines, it's hard to decide on something if we don't know what's going on, right? So maybe in January, February, they could come in and say, here's a plan, here's a proposal,
Yep.
here's a proposal we want the town to put together,
Right.
right?
Right.
For this and this. right?
But the overall affordable strategy is a bigger, broader view of that. That committee and what they're doing is a little piece of it, right? What other avenues are available that we as a council in a municipal unit
Right.
could actually get funding for? What are the strategies the province is going to announce that we could actually apply pressure to, right? What can we do in conjunction with the municipality? Right, those are other pieces of the puzzle.
So how does this all, I guess my question is, how does all this come together?
It's the strategy that you develop and how you want to proceed. So if you sit as a municipal body and say, this is our strategy, this is one piece of the pie, this is another piece of the pie, and the end goal is what? It's more a way of steering to try and find the solution and using all those tools, right? Because they're looking for direction when they come to some other project that they're working on, right? So we can say to them, well, we're looking at doing whatever because this group is doing that, you're doing this, but if we could have, X, Y, Z, right? It's an overall view that will try and encompass and use all of those pieces.
Any questions? Tom, any questions on that kind of thing, or where you get involved as a staff here and stuff?
I think we need to have that discussion on,
Yeah.
and as a council, build our own strategies. How can we help with this? And what are we prepared? These are the things that we would like to be helped with, I guess, basically. The town has land, you would say, where possible, and we have land that we can contribute to the thing. That would be, because it's not all dollars and cents, right?
That's
You
right.
know,
And a lot of it, like, is just a commitment to say, we are willing to work with you and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it too, I mean, you talked about derelict buildings, I mean, we've discussed that, but we haven't got a policy that says that's a priority for a building that comes up as derelict that could be rehabilitated or something like that. We just haven't formalized that.
Yeah, makes sense. So I guess how do we move this forward? Like, how do you see this moving forward that our council can get together and do something like that?
I think maybe if we do a little bit of research before we actually meet about it and see what other municipalities have done, number one. And number two, if we have a discussion from their group, we could have them come in and actually have that discussion with us to say, what are you looking for from us, from the municipality? What are those key points that you're kind of looking for too? That's all part of it too. And then go away and sort of take all that information and formulate the strategy, what pieces we've got and what pieces we might need.
So Tom, if we set any time frame, you and Jeff, for a joint council meeting at all? Or are they just still in phase 2 or whatever, that can't meet?
no, we have,
It might be a good time to bring something like that out of the joint council, right?
Mhm.
If we can get one in, like in
Certainly.
January or something.
usually that is more, unless there's something that as administrators we need to bring to the board. Usually it's the mayor and the board sitting there saying, my council's got all these that we'd like to talk about, and so can we set up a joint meeting? Decide on it's on the agenda, right? Because we haven't talked about, could be a joint meeting coming up. There's a possibility, we don't know that, even on the marketing levy bylaws, because basically the bylaws are, the only difference between the two bylaws is ours is gonna say the town DP, and ours is gonna say the municipality district DP. And every single word in there, other than those words, are gonna be exactly the same.
Because the thing is, your committee would be, are you looking for land or are you looking for money from the town? And if you are looking for money, how much?
I have to say that every meeting they've had that I've listened to, I don't think, not once have they said they want any money from the municipality or the town. They are looking at government grants to do what they need to do.
Yeah. Which it should be, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be.
And,
It's a provincial
It is,
responsibility,
yes,
right?
yes, it is, yeah.
and there could be ways that we can facilitate
Right.
those grants,
Yes.
right? Because there are grants that come out, and they say municipal units can apply,
Yeah.
but certain entities can apply, right?
That's why they.
Or vice versa, it could be, and it could work the other way, there might be an initiative that we want to put forward, that they could apply for grants, we could provide the support, because they could apply for it, but municipalities don't qualify.
That's right.
Right, so, it's good to build the, I guess, to get the partnership started.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Very good. So I don't like to leave it hanging. So I'm
No,
still
you
hanging.
just have to have the discussion, I guess. So I guess we'll just put it on the agenda for town council and have the discussion there. And in the meantime, I'll speak with the committee and see what points they want to bring up.
Okay. Sounds good. each 4 banners.
Well, I sent an email to everybody, concerning, the, Brad Barton being,
Yeah.
inducted into the Canadian Volleyball, Hall of Fame. And I think the town should do something, whether it's a banner, whether it's, Councilor Sonny mentioned, we're doing sidewalks, maybe we put something in the sidewalk for them. I mean, we do have another individual, that I totally forgot about, was Charles Marvin Pop Smith, born in Digby in 1856, and he is in the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. He was a 12-year veteran of the old league. And he, like I say, so there are people, but I think we should, I think we should do something to,
Banner's nice. People see those, it's nice.
I was just in Yarmouth yesterday, and they have all their veteran banners all the way down to the right.
yeah, and it is, yeah. Yes.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Some of these are getting faded too, so I'm done.
I don't know what the cost of a banner is, couldn't remember, and,
I did hear one complaint about the banners. The way they're mounted, if you look down the street at night, they're above street lamps, the small ones on the water side of town. So they're in darkness. Because the shade of the light is underneath them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never thought of that.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't unless you saw it at night. Right?
well, I didn't think
Probably
they
the holders are more than the banners. The
Yes,
banner's
yeah.
probably about $70 or whatever.
About 115.
Is that, yeah.
But, I'd like to see us do something to, it's quite an accomplishment of somebody involved.
Has he got any family here in this area, or?
I'm sure that he still has family here, yeah. Johnny in Halifax.
Was he a teacher up here or something?
He went through school, I don't think he taught here, but,
I remember him refereeing volleyball.
he's been recognized around the world, going to Olympics and so on. He's,
It's a great idea. Is this something, we have a levy to do at a levy? Or is that gonna be too many people? If we decide to do a levy this year, I mean, is that the place to do it?
I'm not sure, just,
I don't know, just thought, or we do it, Digby's birthday. In, what was that, June or something? In June, that'd give you some lead time up to planning it, get design, talk to him. Traveling wise is better for him in June than January.
well, I see, I don't know whether we're having a levy this year, or, what's the protocol going to be.
So with the booklet right now, we're advertising it limited to, pending on restrictions. Municipality is not having one. They're not having one at all.
Yeah. It's kind of up in the
air.
now. There are things that you can do. Right? I mean, unless they revert back to social distancing as a requirement, things like that. For the most part, you could have a levy, everybody would probably have to wear masks, except when they sit down to eat or drink, but, it could be doable, but.
I know Bob Smith, you won't find anybody, we looked the Canadian baseball, looked for relatives, and there's just none living that they know. I mean, only one would be for Brad. And I'm sure there are some relatives.
You still own the host down here too, so.
Pardon?
Brad still owns the host down here too.
Yes, he does,
So, I don't know who can do it, but design something. And Rick does, Digby Print Promo does them, I believe, the banners.
Also, sure.
Yeah, so maybe you can just talk to Print Promo and see what he's got for photos and stuff.
Well, I'm sure the Canadian volleyball, he used a picture of him, and there is pictures of Upsmith that are out there.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it's.
What's his name? What's his name, sir?
Pardon me?
What's his name?
Charles Marvin Pop Smith.
Charles Marvin
Pop
Pop Smith? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
In fact, he's in the Nova Scotia Baseball Hall of Fame, and it's in our local, we had him before anybody else got him, but he was born here in 1856, I believe.
So Jeff LeDrew might have information on him, Sport Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
I can give you his email if you want it, and maybe just
Like I
contact him.
say, Brad, I mean, it would be hard to come up with something, to be used.
So we are with him just going to get some information on it, and then we'll, maybe we put on a council meeting in November. First of the month, and then decide a date.
And I'll see what I can come up with the pictures.
Yeah.
Maybe something we could do around African Heritage Month too, maybe? Or that?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Kinda. You're doing it because,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, I'd rather do it like his birthday or something like that. Even, July 1st would be nice, or whatever, something more public, I guess. Unless other people feel differently, I just throw it out there. Just my feelings.
Great bit of history in the town.
All right. I think that's it. All right. Need a motion to go in camera. Thank you folks for joining us.
So moved. Second.
All right. Now we're on camera, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.